Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sunny Side podcast. Today, I am joined by Simon Cohen. He is the founder of Cohesis. I'm going to let Simon introduce himself. Simon, how are we doing, sir?
Hi Finn, yeah, I'm doing well, thank you, and thanks for having me on.
No worries at all. So, Simon, obviously, we've had a conversation. I kind of know what you're about. I know what Cohesis do, but could you kind of give the audience a little bit of a summary about kind of what you do, who you serve, your value add, if that's okay, sir?
Sure, of course, yeah. So basically, I founded Cohesis 7 years ago with a view of trying to help small, medium organisations, local governments, not-for-profits, make the right technology decisions. And that can involve a number of different things. It's typically around investment, how organisations spend money on technology. That can be anything from risk management, which includes cyber, compliance, governance, all the way through to how do they select vendors, how do they select their IT support companies, what kind of applications to invest in, and how to make technology work better for them. So it's kind of all encompassing, but it's intrinsically around. We produce the documents, we do the thinking, we do the analysis that helps businesses really kind of spend their money wisely.
Interesting. So, you're more of a consultancy firm as opposed to actually kind of delivering the services? Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, so yeah, I would say that we are a boutique consultancy, yeah, and we don't do IT support. We're not going to configure your hardware. We're not going to reset your passwords and things like that on your systems. We're not going to put your telephones in, but we will do risk assessments. We'll write your policies. We'll create a governance framework for you. We will build technology roadmaps. We'll do health checks. We'll do digital strategies, and we'll kind of put those tectonic plates in place that senior leaders, CEOs, the C-suite and boards help them make the right decisions about how to steer the ship effectively, basically.
So are you kind of trying to position yourself closer to the high level business CEO as opposed to like your IT support? Is that kind of why you're doing what you're doing?
Yeah. So I mean, fundamentally, again, it's around it's helping businesses make the right IT decisions from that strategic layer. But we do work with IT support companies. Typically,
Okay.
what we find is that whilst we can do a lot of the thinking and what have you, organizations have IT support companies, whether it's internal, external, or an IT service. And so it's really important that they get the best value out of that service. Sometimes the organizations delivering those services are sometimes too close. Sometimes they're not close enough in the sense that they are obstructed or not included in the strategic decision making process. They're not the trusted advisor. We would typically come in as a trusted advisor to help build that bridge, often between IT support companies and our clients and also their clients, especially where disconnects can occur. But also it's really helping CEOs, leadership teams, fundamentally positioning the business that if a business wants or has a particular strategy, how does technology fit in? And I would say that we are very much more on the application tier rather than the hardware kind of infrastructure tier. That's where IT support companies often operate. We are very much more trying to help businesses use technology to do work more effectively. And how do they join the dots between systems? How does data flow? How is data governed? How do people run their processes? How can automation work? And so another part of the business in terms of what we do is help clients specifically on their Microsoft 365 journey work more effectively through automation, AI, and applications that are really now replacing spreadsheets and access databases and legacy tech. We help them find a way to transition from that legacy tech through to more modern ways of actually helping their staff work. And then in terms of doing that, it's not just about the technology, but it's helping affect that transformation. So, and what I mean by that is, at the end of the day, how do people use technology in a way that actually helps the business deliver their products and services more effectively? And that's the kind of area that we operate in.
So my next question is, how do people use technology more effectively then? If you had to kind of put your finger on it, could you kind of pinpoint it down into one or two things? It's like, or we could rephrase the question as, what are people getting wrong with their technology?
Okay, well, some big questions there. I mean, look, it's. I'm going to give you a big answer. It depends. Classic answer. It kind of depends in terms of the starting point. So different companies have different starting points. Sometimes
Okay.
it is because they're using, as I say, legacy in the sense of it could be there's lots of spreadsheets flying around the business. Spreadsheets are great, but they're not business tools in the sense of data being stored and data being transitioned from one place, from one piece, from one part of the business to another. But it's really around the decision making. So, and by that, it's really around the people at the top tier make the decisions around what applications to use, what should the process be, what are the rules around using that process, what data do we need, how are we going to make decisions, what reporting do we need that actually will help us give us the information so we can make better decisions. And so quite often the starting point is at the end. What does the leadership team need to be able to understand whether their strategies are going to work or whether their operational day to day is actually delivering what they need? And if you come back from the data, you then go back, okay, well, what are the people doing? What systems are they using? How is that flowing through? And if the answers aren't clear, then that's where we start finding those kind of problems. Also, in today's world, the compliance and governance requirements are higher for organizations. As organizations grow, they'll find that their customers and suppliers are requiring them to have a higher level of compliance and whatever frameworks and whatever security and data protection frameworks are prevalent. So there's extra greater consideration around the governance and compliance of how their systems operate. And so that's often an afterthought, which therefore means it then exposes holes in the thinking around how the business is set up to use technology. So I don't know whether that answers the question specifically, but those gaps in terms of how they're using technology maybe incorrectly could come from a governance perspective, could come from or compliance. It could come from the fact that actually people have, and we've been working with some organisations that have exactly this problem. They have a 30-day data shadow. And what I mean by that, it can take them 30 days to get the data right so they can see where they were a month ago. So it's like you have to wait to see where you were, which means that how can you make effective decisions on your business if you're experiencing that? So the answer varies depending on the type of client and the type of business and the problem that they're experiencing.
Do you think there's kind of underlying issues like in certain sectors that like say so you work with like government not for profits, so say is there like underlying issues that most not for profits are struggling with, or does it kind of vary?
It does kind of vary. What I often see is that there's in many of the clients that I work with is that there's been a significant underinvestment in technology. And so therefore there's this kind of technical debt or process debt that builds up that if you're not maintaining and that comes from leadership teams not prioritizing technology, and so therefore the investment isn't going in, so things aren't kept up to date. Some systems are 10 years old or 20 years old or whatever it may be, and then all of a sudden comes the crunch point where okay, we now need to do something, and they're starting from such a low level. Then the other factor in there is you have staff that have always done it this way and aren't really tech savvy, and so there's the uplift of capability of the people within the organization to be able to accept change and to be able to adapt and adopt new systems. And so therefore there's a change management piece which is super important, which again many organizations often overlook. And to be honest, that's where many of the projects that fail, many of the implementations that fail, is the ones that haven't considered the change management in terms of how to actually make sure that A, the software does what it needs to do for the people that are going to use it, and B, making sure the right level of training and change and the activities required for successful adoption are put in place. A lot of that's forgotten. So there's a variety of reasons why this happens, and we see a number of those across all different kinds of organizations.
That makes sense. So do you think there's like a certain amount of years or time that a business should kind of make new systems, or is it done like gradually, just tweaking it like every month, or how do you recommend doing it to for businesses?
I mean, typically, if we were to go into a new client, depending on what the client has articulated what the problem is,
Hmm.
so for local governments we would typically work on a 3 to 5 year strategy, and with that, and they're the high level, the high ticket things like maybe select a new system or implement a new system or do particular things, maybe update the website or whatever it is, some big ticket things, and then we kind of work out the order of priority and then we kind of put a plan together based on their capacity and what have you. So it's not just about replacing or updating systems like all the time. It's around kind of structuring what are the tectonic plates as to what's going to make the organization better. So to give you some examples, normally when we go into an organization, we find that they don't have appropriate policies and procedures. And so think of it like a bowling alley where you go and you bowl, and if it's going off to the right, you've got the guy like the guardrails that make that keep the ball in play, or the bowling ball in play. Policies are a little bit like that, and procedures, they help guide people to make sure that they do the right thing. And then obviously you have other kind of approaches to actually prevent people from doing the wrong thing. So that'll be your security and things like that, not letting people have access to things that they don't need. Quite often that level of understanding isn't quite there. And you need to have that in place before you actually think about the systems, because you have to think about having the right rules in place first. Then when you come into the systems, many organizations will want to implement a big new system, big new ERP system or what have you. But then they haven't thought about, well, what's going to happen as we do that? How does the change work? So in order to do that, you need some kind of knowledge system. How is knowledge captured within an organization? Because one of the biggest risks an organization will have is the loss of knowledge as people walk out through the door. And organizations don't often give enough thought to actually keeping that corporate knowledge in the organization. So
That's
you
so
have
true.
systems, you have to think about that. They don't need changing all the time, but they just need to evolve so that actually you're doing enough. And with whatever systems you've got, is how are they being used, the processes. And you don't need more process than what is necessary, you just need enough. So sometimes as new systems come in, the processes can be tweaked because you may only need one application instead of three, or what have you. So it's a case of what do those applications do. So as we put the building blocks in place, we get an order of events, and that can be mapped out over 9 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever that needs to be for the organization. Many organizations have SaaS software. So coming to your point around how often is software updated, whether it's CRMs, whether it's manufacturing software, whatever it may be, finance tools, new updates are typically being provided by SaaS vendors on an ongoing basis. So these softwares will update themselves anyway. The question is to make sure that people are using them correctly, and that actually you have the right process in place, that even if a new software update arrives, that actually the rules for using the software, and actually making sure that people can't get duplicates of software or software that competes with it internally, shadow IT and shadow applications, that doesn't happen. And so therefore people have the right rules to know how to use the systems. Many of the risks and issues will then be eradicated in terms of what we see. But then that's a cultural change, and that's a training thing, and that needs to evolve over time. So again, when we come into that kind of category of how do people use technology correctly, it becomes cultural, and you have to, in order to change culture, you need to have that the right basis from the top. And how does that happen? Because you come back to your IT or your governance framework of policies, procedures, and practices. Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's actually a very clear overview. Thank you for sharing that. Obviously, what you're doing and your value kind of proposition, I assume that you get asked a lot around AI. I mean, do people want to implement AI when really they could just be doing some automations, or have you been seeing a lot of that, or not as much as you'd think?
I mean, look, everywhere you go, it's like everyone's talking about AI. I was abroad recently. I was in Manila, and the main TV channel we could get was I think it was oh, what's it called, CNN. And literally their whole morning of news and everything was all to do with AI. Jobs being lost, investment for AI companies, like we're going out to market, getting billions of dollars of investment, new data centers, so America is like, gorging itself on AI, and you can understand why. We are now being asked quite frequently is, can you help us decide what AI tools, and how best to use AI? And yes, there's ChatGPT, yes, there's Copilot, Claude, Perplexity, whatever else, Notebook LM, and you've got all these people scattergunning going off doing stuff, which is fine. However, there's AI and there's AI and how you build AI, and the thing that there's a couple of things that people aren't typically really considering. One is, again, the boring G word of governance, is that if you cast your mind back to COVID and everyone was getting onto Microsoft Teams and WebEx and what have you, all these tools got rolled out because it was the imperative that we had to get people working and connecting. And then people have been mopping up the issues that have happened with the lack of control around how that was done. This is the similar kind of thing with AI now, as I see, is that there's lots of people going out using AI, whether it's spell checking or writing stuff or creating marketing scripts and things like that. And that's all great. But there's a lot of AI. A, there's a lot of AI slot. B, because people aren't actually, using it, correctly or not prompting correctly. Then you've got different people using different lots of AI. Then you've got people using client information or personal information in as part of the AI prompts, which might not be secured to the organizational kind of tenant. So it could be going out into the ether, which is therefore training AI again itself. So you've got privacy considerations, you've got data considerations, which many organizations aren't even across in terms of thinking about. Then what I think is going to hit a lot of people, and some have already started in this, is that you've got AI agents that do particular jobs, and then you've got AI agents governing other AI agents, and so forth and so forth. And then you've got, as part of that, the cost of the AI agents increases, exponentially. So you've got organizations that have fired a whole load of people because AI can do everything, now realizing that actually, you know what, the cost of some of the AI agents are then hitting like 100K for some bigger organizations that have gone all into it, where you think, well, actually, we could have had a person doing that. And actually 100K or what have you is now becoming more expensive than getting the person to do some of this work. So AI is great.
Interesting.
But it's like everything, you have to really work out what it is you're doing it for, and then working out the right AI models to use to minimize your AI costing. So you know how there's a whole industry in marketing around cost per click and things like that, and what have you. There's going to be the same thing, similar kind of thing coming in terms of like getting the value out of your AI prompts and things like that, and making sure that before AI goes off and does the big job, it actually validates itself first. But the other thing as well is that the core thing around AI is, yes, it's great and it can do so many things, but actually it doesn't replace the accountability of a person. So yes, AI can make decisions on one level, but for someone who needs to be accountable for a decision, and in the organizations that we typically work with, like local governments, larger enterprises, someone somewhere needs to actually tell a client why they've done something. An accountant, a lawyer, professional services. Yes, AI can do a lot of the grunt work in terms of data churn and stuff like that, but it can't really stand in front of a client and say, you know what, we recommend you do X because of Y. And those kind of people are still going to be required to stand in front of their decisions and how they actually deal with client portfolios or legal risk and things like that. So there are limits in terms of what AI could and should do.
Do you think that will change in the future, though?
Look, probably, but we'll probably have AI customers talking to AI suppliers. You know what I mean? In the future, and they'll all be governed by AI agents. So yeah, probably. But I think right now is people have gone so far and then realised, oh, actually, you know what? We need to just take a couple of steps back and think about this first before we go and kind of plan it properly. And I think that's what I'm seeing at the moment. So we've got the kind of juxtaposition of like, come on in and help us do AI, but help us do AI with a bit of thought, if you know what I mean, and so our clients can plan accordingly, and that's a nice space to be in. The
Absolutely.
yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, yeah, no, I completely kind of agree with you. I want to talk a little bit more kind of about the actual business of like what you're doing at Cohesis and that kind of thing. So is this on your journey, is this kind of your first main business that you've kind of gone all in on, or have you had some businesses before?
This isn't my first business. When I was in the I mean, I was probably my third or fourth kind of thing. It's the first business where I feel as though it's been a proper business,
Yeah.
um, if that makes sense. So many years ago, last century kind of thing, I joined a company called JBA. That was an ERP software development organization. Big organization. It was my first kind of main job out of university, pre the Y2K bubble. October 2000, that bubble had well and truly burst, and I was looking at my third round of redundancies and thought I will take a chance and go, go it alone myself. So I took the VR and I set up my own first kind of company with two other people, and that was all about back in the day in the year 2000 having web applications, and I was a software developer. So I built, and because I was doing a lot of warehousing stuff and manufacturing stuff and things like that, I basically built third-party warehouse manufacturing systems where you were on, where it was like on the internet, and people could be at home or anywhere and see their stock move in and out, and it was traffic light kind of things with graphical bays and what have you. So red if it was full, green if it was empty, amber if there was just some stuff in it but there was more room, and you could map the warehouse accordingly. And back in the day, that was pretty cool,
Yeah.
and
Especially back then.
yeah, and it was, and I was writing kind of like SQL 2000, SQL Server 2000, like really complicated SQL scripts, which were kind of like mini AI of working out where to put stock depending on the type of stock, keeping the kind of similar stock together and stuff like that. Not quite AA, but just lots of if statements based within SQL code, and it worked and stuff like that. And then I did lots of websites and stuff, and then all of a sudden I kind of realized that I was chasing people around. I was doing the coding, I was doing the chasing, I was doing everything, and other than testing, because I'm a great believer in you can't test your own code, not effectively. So other than that, I was doing everything, and it just became too much, and I became an absolute expert in my own code, which was a very narrow slither of nothingness, really. And I thought I needed to do something different, so I went out and got the badges like Prince 2, program management, ITIL service delivery, and then I kind of started working for some larger organizations. And having been there and written the code and understood the business processes behind some of these things, I was able to, and I had some kind of idea around strategy and how things should be done with technology. I actually had quite a lot of, fairly senior roles in one thing or another. So I kind of went into business, came out of business, then I went contracting a little bit. So I had kind of contractor businesses and things like that where I did other little bits here and there. And I had some partnerships here and there where we built some other software, forecasting software, but it wasn't really a proper business, if you know what I mean. Now we have, I'm proud to say that Cohesis, we work on the IT consulting side. I've got a team of 12, 13 people. We do work in manufacturing and implementing cloud solutions. We also do a whole lot of work on Microsoft 365 automation and building bespoke applications, including AI and stuff. So we have our own suite of apps. And so this is like a proper business that has been going 7 years, and it's the longest thing I've ever done. So this feels a lot more real than maybe some of
Yeah.
the other things that I've done, you know what I mean?
No, I assume that you've taken a lot of lessons from your journey and from the other business that you've kind of then taken into Cohesis, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, some of my background is obviously from a technology background, I enjoy having discussions with developers about how things should be done and how databases should be aligned and things like that. So I enjoy those kind of conversations. I enjoy being a product owner for the stuff that we've built. So all the stuff that we've built, I've been heavily involved in, and what have you. When it comes to strategy and compliance and governance, I had some really good people that I worked alongside at places like UBS and Thomson Reuters, and PwC. where the fundamentals have to be right. These are large organisations that back when I was there, Thomson Reuters considered itself a data company. UBS, even though it's one of the top 20 global investment banks, considers itself a risk management business. Do you know what I mean? And so it's really interesting around how these organizations operated, how they secured people's data, and the lengths that you have to go through that you just can't make mistakes. I was involved in managing a project for doing a data center upgrade at UBS. I never got close to that data center. All the meetings we had were outside. You never even got to see it. You never even got close to it. And it's like how the rules are today, where you've got data centers popping up left, right, and center. The security around these things is just immense. And even, I talk about the bowling alley and the guardrails, like with the bowling alley. Those kind of organizations are like that. If you don't follow the process, if you try and jump over the guardrails, you're out. And the guardrails are very strict, and it won't let you very easily manipulate around them. You won't be able to see data that you can't see. You won't be able to access stuff. If you're not in the right zone or what have you, your access goes. If you don't follow all the processes, your swipe card's gone. You know what I mean? It won't work. It is super, super strict. So then tailoring that down and diluting that down to be something that is pragmatic for a local government, that when somebody leaves, like say the CEO leaves, they don't hand over the password to a secure password site. They're handing over the book of passwords. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yes, there's all this stuff that is very high end, but what Cohesis does is try and take, okay, that's what really good can be, but we then dilute it down to be pragmatic so that businesses can take the level that they need to be at, that is relevant for them, whether it's security or governance or planning or whatever it is. Because one size doesn't fit all, and that's where you have to really have the understanding to be able to say, and also to talk techie with the techies and talk the jargon with the techies, but then to be in the boardroom and talk to the executive team and say, look, this is what it means for you. These are your options. Option A, if you do this, will mean this kind of outcome. Option B, something else, and option C, something else. And it's about being able to help them understand that, so again, they can make the right decisions. Yeah.
Absolutely, because a lot of people would just blurt out some like jargon and just like all of the tech stuff. Even me, like I kind of have a brief understanding of it, which I'm sure like some of the executives do as well. But like sometimes I'm thinking like, what is that? Like, what does it actually mean for a
Yeah.
business outcome? So I think that's really good that you've kind of said that. So do you work with businesses just in Australia?
No, I mean, we're based in WA, so we're headquartered in Perth, which is Western
Yeah,
Australia. Um, most of our local government clients are WA, are typically WA clients.
yeah,
We do have. I'm very proud to say that we've just started kind of developing our footprint over east in the local government space, which is great for us. But a large part of our manufacturing clients are over east and in New Zealand. We've also got clientele in Singapore, the Philippines. We've also done some rollouts in the US and China for some of our Australian-based manufacturing clients that have grown, and they've gone into different territories. We've actually supported them in that growth. The Agendis side of the business, so our applications, our Microsoft 365 applications, and the work that we do with integrations and reporting and stuff like that, it comes under our Agendis brand
yes.
name, and that is predominantly WA, but we do have some clients over east as well and in South Australia. So we have a broad mix.
Very
Yeah, and luckily our people are geographically split as well. We have people who work from Europe, in Belgium, Saudi, and the Philippines, as well as obviously people here as well.
So are you fully remote?
Pretty,
Or do you
yeah,
have
yeah. I don't travel to an office other than I'm working from home, and yeah, so all of our people work from home. The client work that we do, we work on client sites. So like we'll go to client sites and work and what have you. But typically our work is done remotely.
Nice, I like that. So I'm interested to hear how you've kind of got your foot in the door, and I mean, yeah, how you kind of acquired these clients, like from all of these different kind of geographics. How has it just been like kind of a good reputation and word of mouth, or have you been doing some kind of marketing and lead gen and stuff like that?
Um, It's really reputation and word of mouth, and partnerships. So, I mean, let you into a secret in that our digital marketing has been really poor. We've tried lots of different areas and avenues, but it just hasn't quite translated for us. And so I've actually stripped it back quite a lot, and we're actually having another more kind of sequenced attack at the things that we're looking at doing.
Yes.
From We are partners with in the MRP space. We are partners with some of the leading vendors in, I would say, not your SAPs and Oracles, which are the top tier of those kind of things, and Infos and what have you, but like the division below, the top of the divisions below. And so we operate in that space in SMEs. And so as being partners, we do get to work with leads that come in from anywhere in Australia and New Zealand. So we're ANZ partners for those organisations. From a local government perspective, our reputation's grown in WA, and we're on the WAGA panel, which is the relevant kind of panel here. In terms of our partnerships in and around that, we are often working, you mentioned IT support companies and MSPs, we often work with MSPs, and more organisations are seeing the value that we can bring. And so, we often get calls, oh, by the way, I'm speaking to such and such, I think you would be a good fit, and help them out in this way. So our reputation, is increasing, and our clients are recommending us to other clients as well, which is obviously always nice. But that only happens because we are diligent about what we do, and we try and help clients. So sometimes actually we get kicked in the butt, and it's on the result of us actually bending over backwards to help clients, which sometimes smarts a little bit. But I'd rather
Do that.
I'd rather get smacked around the head that way, and what have you. But at least knowing that we always try and kind of go the extra mile. So we're not perfect, we make mistakes. And with any organisation, mistakes will happen. It's about how we deal with them when they do. And quite often we always have, we're ethical in terms of how we work. So which is how we've been able to build our reputation and partnerships and word of mouth and things like that.
Okay, interesting. I mean, just before we wrap up, here's a good question for you. So, in order, I assume that you're looking to kind of grow and get to the next level in the business. In order to do that, Simon, what do you think has to change, maybe in yourself as like the main man, and like in the business? Is there anything in particular that kind of screams out to you? Not even
To
necessarily change, but adapts. You because obviously things need to change in order to
Yeah,
go.
absolutely. I mean, look, we have just spent a couple of weeks ago. We had a strategy meeting in Manila where we flew people into Manila, so Belgium's people from Saudi came and what have you, and we basically went through a list of things in terms of what are the next steps that we have to kind of go through in order to be able to grow to that next level. One is obviously our marketing. That is definitely one. We do need to do more things and do that better. The other thing is partnerships. Is really to grow through partnerships. And the other thing I didn't say before is that I'm always very keen to find a win-win-win, where our partner wins, we can win, and the end client wins. And so where we can find a win-win-win, everyone's interests are aligned, it makes it easier. So we're very keen to grow our partner base, especially with organizations that see the benefit of, especially our Microsoft 365 applications and technologies. There's absolutely room for growth in that space, and international growth in that space. We've already built the applications, we already have the capability, we already have the team. It's really my job to be able to kind of extol the benefits of that. The other thing that is an ongoing process is for me to actually make myself redundant. That's what I'd really like to do.
Yourself out of the day to day, you
Yeah,
mean?
I get involved in a lot of the delivery work. I get involved in, obviously, across everything. And I have a really good senior management team that have followed me through for 3, 4, 5 years now. So we know each other very well. We've got a really good way of working. And what we want to try and do now is build the rest of the people underneath so that I can raise them, and my team can actually raise the people underneath as well. So it's all really around trying to actually make sure that different parts of the business understand each of the other parts and can work interchangeably, and to actually the capability of everyone through training and just doing more exciting projects. And the more we can do that, the better.
Okay then, Simon, it's been a very good conversation. If the audience would like to get in touch with you, sir, where can they find you, Simon?
Basically, head over to cohesis.com.au. That's COHES for Simon, I for India, S for Simon.com.au, and you can contact us through the website. If you want to email me, you can reach me directly at simon.cohen, COHEN, at cohesis.com.au, and it'll be great to hear from you all.
I can put all of your links in the description, but Simon, I appreciate you coming on. It's been a very valuable conversation. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Finn. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Thanks a lot.